Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee joins us now. Congressman, thank you so much for coming back on the show. You're, of course, a co-sponsor of the Life at Conception Act, a bill that declares the right to life is guaranteed by the Constitution for each human being at all stages of life, including the moment of fertilization, cloning, or other moment at which an individual comes into being. Are you concerned how a bill like this might impact those who are forced to use IVF in order to build their families?
No, ma'am. If life begins at conception, then life begins at conception, whether that's in a test tube or in the womb or by some other form. Because you have a very small child that you freeze, to me, I think there's still a responsibility there. And I think it's the responsibility of science. I believe that when we do these things, that they don't have to have a massive fertilization, a mass of these eggs. If they can do one and place it in vitro, I think that's the way it should be done. And so I think technology, we need to make sure we have the proper technology, but I think it'd be disingenuous to say if life begins at conception, then we started naming the location of where that occurs.
If this were your daughter, your niece, who was struggling to get pregnant in any other way other than IVF, how you would encourage them to abide by this?
I would just, hopefully they understood that life is life, and it doesn't matter where it was conceived, and that it's just life.
A husband and wife, say, who are trying to have a family, and they can't do it any other way than IVF. I guess I just wonder what other options you're presenting to them.
Well, you're talking about a human life, ma'am, and there's a responsibility that goes with that. And if you create it, if you believe that life begins at conception when the egg is fertilized by a sperm cell, then at that point, that becomes life. And that is the responsibility of the medical professionals, the doctors, the lab technicians, all of those people that are involved in this. Just because you freeze what is a very small baby, obviously, in my beliefs, that just because you freeze it doesn't mean it's any less of a life or not.
And so just from my understanding here, are you against IVF, or if I have 3 fertilized eggs and I'm going to implant all 3, then that's okay with you?
Yes, ma'am. As long as your intent is not to take any of those, to end any of those precious lives, it is.
In many cases, the eggs are not necessarily viable, and you don't know that going in. Right? So what if I want to have 3 kids, but one of the eggs is not viable, or 2 of the eggs is not viable, or embryos in this case? What are you proposing? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand what the plan B is here for parents.
The same as I would if you're pregnant with triplets and one of those children has a defect. I don't think that's our decision to end that life. I think that's left in the hands of God, and I think that every life is precious. I'm not angry about it. I'm not being defensive. I'm just telling you my belief system, ma'am.
Today, Democratic Senator Tammy Duckworth spoke about her own experiences with IVF on GMA3 ahead of the vote on legislation to establish a statutory right to access assistive reproductive technologies. Here's what she had to say.
So it doesn't actually say you must do it, but it says if you want to provide it, if you need it, and if you want to cover it, you can do it without fear of being prosecuted in whatever state you are in this nation.
Do you think there's any likelihood for bipartisan support for that?
Probably. There's folks that don't believe that life believes at conception in the Republican Party. So, and we have a one vote majority, ma'am. So. I don't feel like anything of any monumental consequence will pass in this legislative session.
Republican Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.